Good morning and welcome to the Morning Scoop for Monday, September 6th. This is your daily Buckeye fix. I'm Tom Orr. The Oregon game is in 5 days. The game against Michigan in 82 days. A very happy Labor Day to all of you. With 1 week down in the college football season, well, except for one more game today, we're now starting to put Ohio State's performance against Minnesota into a little more context. It didn't look fantastic from start to finish, but it could have been a lot worse. They are 1-0. We also learned a lot more about what the Buckeyes were going to do this season schematically. My guest today is Buckeye Scoop's X's and O's guru, Ross Fulton. He broke down the Minnesota game, put together a fantastic piece looking at the things we saw from both the OSU offense and defense. Ross, thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Tom. Happy to be here.
So let's start right at the top. That first long touchdown run by Mayan Williams. It was interesting because he told us after the game he ran the wrong play. And it obviously turned out well for the Buckeyes, but what were they trying to do on that one?
Yeah, so I think what I've pieced together is that C.J. Stroud was supposed to move Williams over to the other side of the other side of him, and then they were supposed to run the same wide zone play to the wide receiver side, and that was going to be combined with a bubble screen action to Garrett Wilson. And so the thought being that you kind of put the force defender that has to play that run in a bind, whether he's going to cover that bubble or take Mayan Williams, and you probably create a cutback. But the way Minnesota so over rotated themselves to the 4 receivers field, it basically left them a safety left to try to tackle Mayan Williams. And so, one stiff arm later, it was a long touchdown run. So I guess sometimes mistakes are, the mother of invention.
Reminds me of Ryan Day last year saying, sometimes the players have got to make him look good. If he calls the wrong play, like sometimes Justin Fields has to make me look good. Yeah. Mayan Williams made them look good, not on purpose, but it worked out okay. Rewatching the game, it struck me how much they relied on play action in the passing game to open things up. But to be able to do that, you obviously have to stay on schedule and make teams respect the threat of the run. Can you explain why that's important and why that makes such a big difference if you do it well?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously a cliche that, play action is a young quarterback's best friend. I mean, in particular, Ohio State was keeping it, fairly simple. I mean, they're on those plays, they're not running 5-man routes. They're usually 6 to 7-man protection schemes with a pulling guard or center to really sell play action. And so, that basically they were giving C.J. Stroud effectively a high-low read. You have a vertical route. They were running a lot of those deep cross or over routes. And so obviously that keeps it, pretty straightforward for the quarterback. It also fits, we've seen it now for several years now. That's just how Ryan Day and Kevin Wilson, how they like to push the ball downfield vertically, and that's how they like to do it. And so, but obviously, if you're it's a lot easier when you're in 2nd and 4 to sell that than if you're in 2nd and 9 or, even worse, 3rd and long. And so that's why, running the football is so important and is, as good as the Ohio State offensive line was run blocking, you still need your running backs to do their part as well. And so, when they got that out of the extremely large amount of tailbacks, that set up everything else. And, then they were able to really stretch, Minnesota, who wants to keep 2 high safeties, by overloading one side of the field with, the play action, one guy running long and one guy coming underneath him on a cross.
Well, in addition to play action, another thing that you can do to put your young quarterback in a position to succeed is give him like real favorable matchups. And one of the ways to generate real favorable matchups is through formations. One example that you mentioned from the game was Garrett Wilson's long touchdown. What did they do on that play that really set themselves up for success?
Yeah, again, so they used a lot of trips or unbalanced looks. And so, Minnesota, in contrast to the Ohio State defense, really likes to play split 2 high safety zone scheme. So they're running a lot of, cover 2, cover 4, quarter half, where they're, playing cover 4 on one side and cover 2 on the other. And so obviously, if you're doing that, you're in sort of like a balanced look across the field. And so if the offense is then overloading one side, it puts a lot of pressure on the defense. Either that backside safety has to come over, or they have to rotate themselves in such a way. And so, on that Wilson touchdown, they got him basically singled up on that cover 4 safety. And the other side of the field, because they were trips, and then they had a tight end to the other side, pulled, way over. And so that basically when he essentially had a two-way go on that safety. And so when he was able to break to the post, that guy had no help over there. And so, that you saw them do a lot of things, all those, I said during the game, I think I can't remember the last time Ohio State ran so many bubble and slip screens to wide receivers, which again, you have a young quarterback trying to get some completions. You have two guys, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, that you want to get the ball to in as many ways as possible. But because Minnesota wanted to keep those two safeties, they weren't covering down or, putting a man on the person in the slot. And so that just opened a lot of leverage for Ohio State to run those plays. So, if the defense is going to give you those free yards, you want to take it.
You can ask just about anyone who's wearing an Ohio State jersey or has Brutus in their avatar on Twitter right now, and you'll get an answer to this question. But I know you have an answer too, and I'm more interested in your answer than a lot of people. So, you seemed in your piece that you're releasing at BuckeyeScoop.com to have a pretty strong opinion on which running back should be playing the most moving forward. So, who are they, and why do you think that?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it has to be Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson. I mean, they're the two guys who consistently create yards after contact or go beyond what the offensive line has blocked for them. I understand why they want to play Master Teague. It's a difficult situation, I'm sure, chemistry wise and internally, but it's just night and day. And particularly in the situation with the young quarterback, as I said, when they fell behind schedule, because they just run such a zone heavy scheme, and Teague just does not have that lateral quickness. Whereas like Williams is a big guy, but he has really good feet in the hole, and so he can shift and obviously break tackles. That, as I talked about in my article, that first touchdown in the second half, to Olave was set up by the fact that Williams got hit like a yard past the line of scrimmage, but he turned it into a 6-yard gain. And so again, 2nd and 4, now you can run that play action concept as opposed to 2nd and 9. And so, I know obviously I think probably some people even more than me are calling for, Henderson to be the full-time guy. I personally think that Williams has a lot to offer and is a very good back. And I think, with the true freshman, I think they would complement each other. But I mean, it's hard enough. You can't play 4 tailbacks, even if all 4 of them are good. I just don't think that's a sustainable strategy to begin with. And so I think they really have to tighten it up, because I just think that, they just don't want to put Stroud in situations where he's putting him in behind the schedule.
And on the other side of the ball, we saw the new and, arguably improved Ohio State defense in action for the first time. What were they doing in base looks this time? We were sort of eagerly anticipating what is the base defense actually going to be this year? So what are they doing? And then what's the goal behind what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, it is a big change, even though it may not look like a big change. So they've really flipped the defensive back role. So the bullet, I'm now actually wish they didn't call it that, because really it's just they're running a strong safety now where they didn't before. And so, Ronnie Hickman played essentially the whole game as the bullet. And, he is a traditional, pretty stereotypical in the box, strong safety. And so, Minnesota was an interesting test case, because they were running out 6 offensive line formations, 7-man offensive line formations. And so when Ohio State did bring in a third linebacker. They didn't do it all the time, but when it was Dallas Gant coming in, and he would actually replace the cover safety, aka the nickel slot corner. So essentially, again, they use these terms, but in effect, for a team, let's say like Alabama, we call those same positions. Hickman's the strong safety, and Latham Ranson is the star or nickel back, essentially. And so, when they play Oregon, though, I would assume that both those positions will be on the field 90+% of the time. Minnesota is a weird case where, most teams they play these days are going to be in 11 personnel the majority of the time. But, it's not that Hickman's doing a ton of different stuff on a play-to-play basis that the Sam linebacker did last year. He's pretty much up in the box. He's going to line over the tight end. He's going to follow him a lot. But it does add some versatility that now you can drop into, a 2 deep safeties going forward, or, have him as sort of a robber on those inside routes and a better defender in man coverage, obviously, on a tight end as well than a linebacker would be.
You talked earlier about Minnesota and their 2 safety look, the 2 high look. At this point, we all know Ryan Day likes the 1 high look. But then you talked about how Minnesota was using motion on Thursday to take advantage of that one high look. So what were they doing, and what did that do to the Buckeye defense?
Yeah, I mean, defense is tough these days. I mean, I just talked about ways that, some weaknesses with playing split safeties, and now we can go into some weaknesses with playing single high safeties. And so, Minnesota obviously wanted to run the ball, and they like using that short motion you see where the tight end, really goes hard at the snap. I mean, he's moving at the snap, and people like to use that to run split zone. And so what would happen is Ohio State, and they did adjust through the game, but if they're in cover one, the bullet is going to follow that tight end. And then you're going to run. So you got the tight end blocking back, and they're running zone opposite that block back, that split zone, right? And so you almost get a 2-for-1 because now you've pulled the bullet over to the backside of the formation. Plus you have the guy that the tight end's blocking back against. And now you've lost your force support to the front side of the play. And so, there's definitely ways to manipulate things, which is, why as we've talked about in the past, it's not that Ohio State, there's not a problem with what they use as their big scheme. Everything has weaknesses. It's just that they need a bit more variety and still do, frankly, so that it's not as predictable. And occasionally you catch the offense thinking that they're going to get X and you give them Y. And, you jump in front, just sort of like Georgia did to Clemson with that pick six. They thought they were going to have that inside RPO glance route open, and the slot corner jumped it, and so you just try to catch them. But, you also saw Ohio State played a lot more man than they ever did last year, especially after a game or two. So they obviously are going to, we'll see how it is going forward. I mean, Minnesota's obviously a run first team if they continue with it, but they do seem set on being able to play more man coverage this year than they thought they could last year.
You just mentioned the glance RPO from the Clemson Georgia game last night, so I'll touch on this now. You in your article you wrote about the difficulty that Ohio State had on defending glance RPOs. What a smooth transition that was. Okay, so can you explain to people what those are and then why they created issues for the Ohio State defense?
Yeah, so it's an RPO, run pass option, right, is where the quarterback is going to read a second level defender. So currently for Ohio State, a lot of times it's going to be the bullet to that front side. And he's reading him. He's not blocked. If the bullet or the linebacker, on on the side he's reading, if they trigger down on the run action, he's going to pull it and throw. I call it a glance route. I've seen it called a bang route. It kind of looks like a slant. It's just a little deeper, and you're really just that receiver's kind of breaking to the inside for grass. And if he doesn't trigger, if he stays back, he's just going to hand off, and they're going to run the ball. And as an offense, then you hope you essentially cancel that guy out without blocking him. Ohio State has now struggled with it because, again, with the scheme they run, they're playing a lot of single high. The corners, especially in cover three, have outside leverage. And then they have their linebackers trigger really aggressively on run action. Too aggressively, in my opinion, because I'd like to have them sit a little bit and muddy that read. And so, again, Minnesota completed quite a few of them. I did see one where Ryan Watts handled it really well. And if you're a man, it's easier because you're right on top of the receiver as opposed to cover three where you're trying to get depth. But it's just going to continue to be a challenge for this defense. I mean, I think part of going to the bullet is, again, that they can use him to sort of, I call it cover three buzz, sort of drop into that underneath zone. And again, just like we were talking about with Georgia Clemson, try to catch the quarterback making a mistake. But, again, it's hard. Minnesota, then one play they faked the glance RPO and the guy broke back outside and turned Burke around, and it was easy completion. So again, it's these are difficult concepts to deal with, but Ohio State, it just can't be automatic to complete them against. Like an offense just can't know it can go back to that. You have to eventually do something to sort of muddy the waters or make the coaches think twice that, our quarterback could get fooled here and we could throw an interception.
Minnesota presented one kind of challenge for the Buckeyes this Saturday against Oregon. That's going to be a little bit different. This is not exactly the same. It's not exactly the same team. It's not exactly the same scheme. So what changes would you like to see Ohio State make before the Oregon game to deal with what is, presumably going to be a bigger challenge than Minnesota was?
Yeah, I mean, the obviously getting your three defensive backs back would be a key one. I mean, for all the concern about the defense, I can't imagine there's too many teams in college football if both your starting cornerbacks out that are going to look great. in the secondary. And, Josh Proctor, I mean, it's just such a drop off. He was playing really well. So you want him back. They need to cut the rotations down in the back end. I mean, you can't have two middle linebackers that are splitting reps or just choosing to have a series here and there where you're playing backups. I mean, A, they're not good enough right now to do that. And B, I think they need to let those guys get in a rhythm. As I said in my article, Cody Simon needs to be the Mike linebacker, similar to, the same point about the tailbacks. Like, he's clearly better. And I know he's been nicked up and needs to play. But then, I also think it really looked like hockey line shifts at times. I think they were like almost trying to do too much matching of personnel, like Minnesota's running X. Okay, we see it. Okay, now you three run on the field. I think you just need to get up, shorten the rotation, decide who you feel comfortable with playing, and then let them adjust to what the defense or what the offense is doing.
Well, that is going to be a fascinating game to watch this weekend. There are a lot of interesting storylines on both sides of the ball, and it does feel like we're going to have a much better sense for exactly what kind of Ohio State team this is, and maybe where the ceiling of this Ohio State team is after that game on Saturday. Ross, thank you for joining me. Already looking forward to whatever we're going to get to talk about next week before after the next game. That's these are always very popular shows, so it's nice to have football back, so we have new football stuff to talk about. So thank you for joining me.
Absolutely, Tom. Thanks.
All right. And if you want to read Ross's full report, you can find it at buckeyescoop.com. That'll be up a little later on this week. But also do make sure you check out our Ask the Insiders board. We've got all of our team of insiders providing insight, analysis, reporting you just can't find anywhere else. It's all at buckeyescoop.com. And do subscribe also to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/buckeyescoop. We put all of our press conferences up there, player interviews, coach interviews, all of our podcasts, pregame shows, postgame shows. It's all there at youtube.com/buckeyescoop. Hit that little bell to subscribe, and then you'll get notified every time we post a new video, every time we do a new live stream, new program, new show. You get notified right on your phone, so you never miss a thing. Should be a big, exciting, interesting week of football in Columbus, and that would be a great place to experience all of it. So that'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.